Hey, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Well, let's talk a little bit about Will Rogers and the effect he has on your health. And you may be going, Will Rogers is a comedian. What the heck? And it's like, well, he had created a thing called the Will Rogers effect. He made an observation that during the Dust Bowl era, a lot of Oklahomans left Oklahoma to go to California, thereby raising the IQ in each state. Now, the joke was this basically, the people that were leaving Oklahoma, which had an average IQ of about 100, the people that were leaving had an IQ of about 98. And they were going to California, which at that time had an average IQ of 95. Therefore, statistically, improving the IQs in both states. Now, the practical result was nobody was getting smarter at the end of the day. But, that's kind of the joke of the whole thing, that you can create quote unquote improvement without really having any net result. Now, why does this get serious? Well, these guys realized that that joke was actually being utilized in medical research a lot. And it was helping, unfortunately, to influence people's decisions on their overall health care. Let's take, for instance, cancer. Cancer, they keep touting this idea that, hey, we are winning the war on cancer because the years of survivability have gone up pretty dramatically. And then when you look at the statistics, you go, yeah, people are living longer with cancer than ever before. So therefore, we must be winning. But that's not necessarily true. This is a real example of the Will Rogers effect in action. And let's take, for instance, prostate cancer. Before the 1970s, when they created the PSA test, only about 92,000 people were diagnosed with prostate cancer. Okay, and the survivability rate per 100,000 was about 28. So, if you got diagnosed with it, your chances of, dying of it were, about 28 individuals per 100,000 men. Okay, that's pretty significant and all that stuff. But along comes the PSA test. And now they're able to diagnose people much earlier than ever before. So instead of having 60,000 or 69,000 people diagnosed with prostate cancer, we've increased that over 10 times. So now over 600,000 people have been diagnosed. And as a result of this earlier diagnosis, there was a reduction in the number of people who died of it by about 28%. Okay, that's pretty significant. That's good news and good science, etc. But what does that mean as far as overall health statistics are concerned? Well, frankly, not much. Frankly, most people that are diagnosed with prostate cancer, most men are going to die with prostate cancer cells in them. They're going to die of something else. The prostate cancer isn't going to kill them, but they're going to die with prostate cancer. That's just reality. And, what has this done? This earlier diagnosis, what has it done as far as helping people live longer and better? Well, frankly, not much. I mean, you've now got 600,000 people that have now been diagnosed with prostate cancers that are probably going to experience biopsies, maybe experience radiation, maybe prostatectomies, et cetera, for something that is not going to extend their life in any meaningful way, even though they've been diagnosed earlier. And this gets even particularly worse with women who are diagnosed with DCIS, which is a type of, basically it's stage 0 breast cancer. And this was something that was hardly ever detected in women unless they were undergoing some other procedure. And they would find these cells in the milk duct. And as it turns out, for most women, if you get diagnosed with DCIS, which went from a few thousand before mammography to over 60,000 per year, were being diagnosed with stage 0 breast cancer because of this. Now, this is the thing that, about 14% to 30% of these cases will clear out by themselves without any type of treatment at all. They're just not going to ever advance into any type of aggressive, bad form of breast cancer. But these 60,000 women are now diagnosed as having breast cancer, and many of whom received lumpectomies, mastectomies, chemotherapy, radiation, etc. They're now diagnosed as breast cancer survivors. And most of the time, they would have never known it except for the early diagnosis. Now, what this means for a lot of major hospital chains that wanted to show that they were winning the war on cancer is they got very aggressive at diagnosing cancers. Now, this does not mean that people were living longer. I mean, if you got diagnosed with, say, you're a 50-year-old woman, and then you felt a lump, and they diagnosed, oh my goodness, you've got breast cancer. Well, if they did everything that they could have done to help you survive, let's say statistically you died at 55 of breast cancer. Okay, now, let's take this thing forward a few years. We've got better diagnosing machines. We have these, we can now diagnose your cancer at 45. Now, but they do everything they can do, but you still die at 55. But the survivability rate has increased by 5 additional years. What happened during those additional 5 years? Well, you've got all these medical procedures, all these expensive tests, all these, life-changing things, chemotherapy, radiation, double mastectomies, life-changing events. And plus the psychological effect of having that sentence of breast cancer, etc. That extra 5 years didn't extend your life by 5 years. It increased the survivability because they diagnosed it earlier. And therein kind of lies the problem. And, we've got a whole medical system that is being set up to create these Will Rogers type statistics, but are not really affecting you and your health and not increasing your survivability. This is kind of the same game that they play with heart disease. Now, heart disease is still the number one killer, but they will say, if you Google it, you will find lots of statistics that show, we are winning the war on heart disease because people survive heart attacks more than ever before. Now, it's really difficult to find the statistics to see how many more people are having heart attacks, because we're having a lot of heart attacks, but people survive them better because we're better able to treat them. There's defibrillators everywhere. More people know CPR, et cetera. So there's more things that help you survive a heart attack. But the number of people that are having heart attacks, it's still the number one killer. Cancer. Even though we are increasing the length of time that you can survive with cancer from diagnosis, it's still the number 2 killer. Medical mistakes are still number 3 killer. So all these things kind of work against you and your health because of phony statistics. And this is what you need to be aware of. When you start asking, when you've been diagnosed with something, you really got to ask harder questions than just what are the survivability rates in terms of years, but what is this thing going to do to the quality of my life? And how serious is it? And is there a good chance that this thing might clear out? I mean, there's a whole group of people that are showing that there's a lot of cancers that will go into remission and disappear by changes in diet, without chemo. I'm not offering a diagnosis. I'm not offering a prescription, but there's other alternative ways of looking at cancer that we're detecting early. But just because you're detecting it early doesn't mean that it's actually improving the quality of your life or the length of your life. Those are a different group of statistics that you really need to dig into before you sign off on treatments, because it's an expensive process. Look, you've got one chance at your life. That's it. And early diagnosis doesn't always mean better outcomes. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore, and I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, Please hit like and subscribe. Join this channel of other like-minded folks. I try to put out a couple messages each week, and I will talk to you again soon.